Forscher, Architekt, Chemiker, willst alles nicht. Wie wär's mit Banker, Taxifahrer? Jetzt weiß ich. Pilot.
The critically acclaimed Swiss movie Vitus is about a precocious young man who struggles with the pains of mentally developing too quickly. His parents are constantly looking for opportunities to enrich him and create room for growth. They end up placing enormous pressure on the boy, forcing him to learn how to make others respect his emotions and ambitions. His main confidant, his grandfather, is a wonderful man who sees Vitus as more than a Wunderkind, a genius. He sees him as his grandson. Vitus's grandpa loves planes and flight. His suggestion of pilote as Vitus's profession is significant because it contrasts against the heavily academic jobs that his parents wish him to take on. Michel Desmontaigne wrote about this, the education and raising up of children, for his friend Diane de Foix. Diane was an expectant mother, hoping and praying for a son and heir. Though Montaigne never had a son, he did have 6 daughters. Only one survived infancy. Montaigne's childhood was unusual in that his father only hired tutors and helpers who were fluent in Latin. This meant that Latin was Montaigne's first language, allowing him to freely explore the works of the ancients at will. He popularized a then new form of writing, the essay, which in French means the attempt. In one of his widely acclaimed essays on the education of children, Montaigne tries to offer Diane an account of how he would raise a noble, kind, and strong son. I find this relevant because we draw a culturally arbitrary distinction between children and adults, and we often implicitly assume that the lessons and techniques consistent with the learning of children cease to be useful when we're adults. The first lesson of this video is just that. We're all children. If you want to perpetually learn and grow, you must be like a child. In educating a kid, or educating oneself, Montaigne sets forth a couple of critiques. He says that many people learn a little about everything and nothing about anything, highlighting an issue that was as present in 16th century France as it is in 21st century America. The vast majority of people back then and now go through school and are stuffed with information like they're a turkey before Thanksgiving. Somehow, they retain very little. He also lambasts people who use the thinking of others rather than their own, because he sees it as a form of cheating which only earns the respect of the ignorant masses, and not true practitioners. Montaigne thoroughly felt that the inculcation of intellectual originality and integrity were vital to the creation of a fulfilled and well-rounded human being. He highlights this further throughout the essay, citing Plato's quote that it would be a tragedy were philosophy to mean learning a lot of things and talking about the arts rather than living a good life. Montaigne envisions the formation of a person who makes their education into a rule of life without showing off. Someone who can control themselves and obey their own principles. His ideal childhood education leads the child to seek book learning, not for money or external advantages, but because of the inward benefits which will enrich and adorn them. This is also important because people often spend years in training for activities in which they never achieve anything. You have to learn for learning's sake, for it to be 100% worth it. As a result, Montaigne advises Madame de Foix to find a tutor whose mind is well-formed rather than well-filled. He recommends placing character and intelligence before knowledge. Montaigne also sets out a simple method of instruction, stating, "Let the tutor not merely require a verbal account of what the boy has been taught, but the meaning and the substance of it. Let him judge how the child has profited from it, not from the evidence of his memory, but from that of his life." The things you learn on this channel may not stick with you, but I hope that they expand your mind and cause you to consider ideas you may never have encountered otherwise. I wish that your personal studies would do the same. As you gradually understand how to take notes, categorize the information you learn, and draw connections between it all, I hope that you place the greatest emphasis on applying it to your life and relationships. I also caution you against one of Montaigne's peeves, becoming a person who apologizes for not being able to say what they mean, maintaining that their head is so full of fine things that they can't speak well enough to explain them. He says people can't explain what they think because they lack any sort of clarity about it. though they often use their ostensible genius as an excuse. As Montaigne says, once you have mastered the things, concepts, forms, the words will come. If you truly understand an idea, you should be able to explain it to a child. Just as an example, there's the hugely popular Explain Like I'm 5 subreddit. It's not enough to have a vague, shadowy notion of what was written in that book you read, about which you only remember that it made you feel good. You have to be able to deploy that information without referencing the book, so you can experience the majority of your life, not in the book, but in the real world. I'm not talking about pure memorization, but I am promoting understanding, which may involve some level of memorization. Montaigne abhors people who are neither free from tutelage nor able to take steps on their own. Interestingly enough, it sounds like that quote is describing a state of nonage, which I talked about in my Plato Allegory of the Cave video. This theme, that of living in the real world, is repeated throughout the essay. Montaigne bemoans people who, rather than trying to learn about others, attempt to teach them about themselves. He believes children should spend their childhoods learning about other people and dispelling ignorance by rubbing brains against each other. He doesn't envision a student who constantly argues or fights. Rather, Montaigne wants to form a human who only embraces conflict of any sort when a worthy opponent presents themselves, and even then, only employs the methods which are most useful in the contention. On the education of children places the utmost importance on not protecting kids, or for our purposes, yourself, from difficulty, danger, or discomfort. Montaigne quotes Horace, a Roman poet. To make him a real man, or to make a child a real adult, do not spare their youth. Let them camp in the open, amidst war's alarms. This highlights the immense value Montaigne places on creating adaptive, independent, just, honest, and wise adults who are comfortable in any situation or station. He demands an integrity so rigorous that it requires an individual to give up their own argument in a discussion if they detect even a modicum of error or untruth. He says, stubbornness and rancor are vulgar qualities, visible in common souls, whereas to think again, to change one's mind, and to give up a bad case in the heat of the argument are rare qualities showing strength and wisdom. Only fools have made up their minds for certain. Montaigne believed children, or you, should be invited to letters, philosophy, the arts, mathematics, any learning, as though you're a guest being brought to a wondrous and plentiful feast. He hoped that this would enable those learning under him to eat widely, digesting the information so that they could process it and develop their own conclusions. Were one to regurgitate the food as it had been swallowed, it showed that he'd not done his job. The task of education, in Montaigne's eyes, was to endow its pursuers with wisdom. This would make the tempests of the soul serene and teach hunger and fever how to laugh, not by imaginary workings or methods, but by reasons, natural and palpable. He ends his essay with an exhortation. Dare to be wise, start now. To put off the moment when you will start to live justly is to act like the bumpkin who would cross, but who waits for the stream to dry up. Time flows and will flow forever as an ever-rolling stream. Hey guys, I'm still trying to figure out how to do these videos, and I'm trying to determine whether I want to keep a more essay format or go more casual. So I think the content that I'll be producing in the future might be a mix. That being said, if you have any feedback, please leave it below and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.